beginning to see the proliferation of these drones and how technology is outpacing policy. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts if the U.S. government were to put in every major organization, defense and intelligence, like Department of Energy, right, where they have
Yeah.
facilities they got to protect, and maybe the Navy, who's got bases in the Air Force, and the major combatant commands. What if UH had a drone representative there that was responsible for looking at drone activity, both defensively and offensively for those commands, and not only advising those organizations and services, but then reporting to a drone czar? And now I say this because if you go back in the clock 60, 70 years ago, before we ever made it to
Yeah.
space, we only had an Air Force and an Army and a Navy,
Sure.
right? We weren't fighting in space. We weren't in space. And now we have a Space Force and a Space
Yeah.
Command because we've got a lot of equities in space. This is one of those rare occasions where you have this gray area between a technology that could be used for military purposes, is being used for intelligence, could be
Yeah.
used as a weapon, and could be used for civilian and other uses. And that guy or gal reports directly to your folks and
Yeah.
says, look, here's the emerging technologies, here's the threats, here's what we're seeing overseas, here's what we're doing here, here's our counter drone capabilities, here's our offensive drone capabilities, and here's what we can do and what we can't do. I'm wondering
Yeah.
if something like that would be helpful.
Listen, 3 weeks ago, I would have said that's a huge waste of time and money. It's not that big a deal yet, but it turns out, it's interesting. I mean, especially when, people think of, the Department of Energy as actually having to do with energy. Their biggest thing is actually guarding the nuclear arsenal. And so if there's
That's
drones
right.
flying over that stuff and they're mapping all that out, I mean, it
right.
doesn't take much to envision a potential disaster. So, it's certainly something interesting. I think we're trying to cut government, but I think there are things that we obviously, need to do to protect ourselves. So maybe, Lou, what I'd ask is how does all of this stuff, fit into the broader mosaic of the work you've been doing? You have your new book, Imminent, which is a look inside the Pentagon's hunt for UFOs, but what I learned last time in talking about this, the UAP doesn't necessarily mean it's an alien, right? There's just,
Yeah.
it's different.
It's absolutely
what's
related.
the next chapter in this story? Does all of this sort of intertwine in that?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. It's all related. Look, everything is a UAP or UFO until it's identified, right? Everything is on. Anytime you have a lack of information, people will automatically fill it in with what they think or what they think they know. So it's a data starved environment, but let's go through some of the options. Could it be foreign adversarial, foreign sponsored? It could be. I doubt it at this point. I think it's probably not, because I said before, the infrastructure would be, and it would be so provocative that some could even say it was an act of war. But let's talk about the problem of that. If somebody were to have a foreign capability, and let's say they put a bunch of sprayers on it and wanted to spray chemical agents or biological agents, that'd be a great way to do it, right? We can see how drones have been weaponized over in Russia right now and in the Ukraine in that battle. They're being used and they're being weaponized very, very effectively. So that concerns me. So for somebody to say, well, nothing to worry about here, I disagree with that. I think there is something to worry about it if you don't have full control and understanding of what's in your skies, which clearly this administration does not. Secondly, it could be our technology. Like you said, there could be a broken arrow situation, perhaps a weapons of mass destruction through sensitive intelligence reporting indicates that there is a potential weapons of mass destruction somewhere by a U.S. equity, critical U.S. equity somewhere in the world, and that but it was put in there as kind of a just in case the U.S. decides to go, hand to hand with somebody else. That's another scenario. Another scenario is that what people are seeing is actually two different things. In the old days, if there was a UAP incident, or in the vernacular for your audience's sake, a UFO incident, and despite what people think, we actually spent a lot of government money and taxpayer money investigating UFOs. So let me just put that out there. That's a reality. That's a fact. We did do that. We're still doing it. In the old days, you'd send up a helicopter. You'd have to wake up a crew, or maybe they were already, on the ready, and it'd take them a little while, spin up to the helo and go out and see what was coming over the wire. Now we have drones. We have technology where you can have something geofenced, and if there's something that enters your airspace, it can automatically trigger a drone response, and 5 or 6 drones will go out and investigate the situation. So you have some people reporting very large vehicles where the navigation lights are not blinking in any known navigational colors. It's not, i.e., red and green. It's not anti-collision or avoidance lights. They're not bright white. In some cases, they're yellows, they're blues, they're purples,
or they disappear entirely.
So, right. Yeah,
or they just go totally dark, again, in violation of what would be typical FAA rules for, I know as a pilot, if your strobe's not on, you can't go up in the air.
Right, absolutely. Right, exactly. And these strobes in some of them cases are not the same frequency, they're not the same colors, they may not even be navigation lights. Some have been reported being huge and silent. Some have been reported coming out of the water, and some have been reported moving away at very, very fast speed. So from a UAP perspective, and I want to caveat here, I'm not saying necessarily these are UAP, but here's part of a theory that you have some of these UAP, these drones initially are UAP, and they are being reported by the local civilian and law enforcement population. And then what you have is a military response of drones that are going out trying to find these things, and then other people, civilians in a wider area, are reporting all the drones that are coming out, 5, 6 drones at a time, seem to be doing this racetrack or this scanning, if you will, low-level scanning of the area. It's possible that they're looking for whatever maybe they saw, maybe it was UAP related, and now they're hoping maybe there was some sort of landing or a crash or something like that, and they're looking for it potentially. And I only say that because, and the evidence there is still, there's more data needs to be obtained, but it would make sense that you have some people reporting something completely opposite than a drone. Some people say this is totally silent, it's huge. Other people saying, no, it's small, it's a quadcopter, and I can hear the whirring of the engine. Both might be true, actually. We don't know. And there's a lot of people right now, even within my circles, that dismiss that theory. So we have to be very careful. I don't want to put it out there as fact because it is certainly not fact. It's just one of the many, many options of what this could be. It could also be a contractor, a U.S. government contractor. And under certain circumstances, the U.S. Department of Defense does not have to admit it's their equity. There are certain critical technologies on a critical technology list that if we develop a certain capability, we don't necessarily have to admit that. So we have the capability to shoot it down. We just won't, or we can't, right? And then somebody brought up a really good point. Well, so the White House position was, well, we don't want to endanger the public, right? If we shoot one of these down, it come down, it could hit somebody's house. And yet there's these incidents with the U.S. Coast Guard where you have up to 10 of these things literally stalking a U.S. Coast Guard cutter. And you're out in the middle of the ocean. Why can't you bring it down there? Right. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. It's the explanation of, oh, by the way, these are all lawful, so don't shoot them down, but we don't know where they're coming from. We don't know who owns them. We don't know where they're going. We don't know what they can do. And they are oversensitive military installations. I think is not only utter nonsense. I think it's a disservice to the American people.